Welcome to This Is My Architecture from the harbour city of Sydney, Australia. I'm joined by Joel from REA Group. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you.
So what does REA Group do?
So we operate realestate.com.au, which is the biggest property portal in Australia. And we've also got interest in iProperty Group in Southeast Asia.
Fantastic. So you've obviously got lots of users all the time searching for homes, buying, rental, commercial, the whole gamut.
Yep.
And you had some issues around being able to update that on a regular basis without any downtime.
Yep.
Talk us through where you were and where you went to.
Yeah, so I guess the problem we're trying to solve is you serve a web page to a consumer, they pull down the web page and then they pull down all the static assets associated with it. So that'll be the JavaScript and the CSS and the images and that kind of stuff.
When we talk about images, like you guys serve billions a month.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of images. Yeah.
So we'll serve the web page and then pull the static assets down separately, and there's usually a linkage between these things. And we want to be able to cache the static assets for a long time because they're quite sizable. And so there's a pretty standard technique of using an MD5 hash on the end of the file name, and then there's a linkage between the HTML and the assets that get pulled down. And so that all works really nicely as long as you don't want to do a deployment or change things, which we tend to do every now and then. The problem happens then is that we've set ourselves up in a really highly available architecture where we've got multi-region and we keep the regions quite separate. And we've got a CDN sitting at the front that does latency-based routing between. And what we can't do is we can't guarantee that a consumer making the initial request to hit a server will hit the same server for the subsequent request. So you can get this mismatch. And so you may have seen it before on some sites where you suddenly get a page with the HTML content and all the styling's broken and the app's not functional. And so we can't really have that. So that's the problem we're trying to solve here. And
so originally you would have the user would come through and get the content directly from an S3 bucket.
Yeah, so I guess our first approach was to, as part of our build, we'd publish it to an S3 bucket, and then all the apps, we'd have to update them so that they tell the consumer to actually go and get the content from the bucket instead. And so to do that, we put a bunch of complicated logic in our CDN. It worked, it really worked. We were highly available, still up and all that sort of stuff. I guess the key problem though is every time a developer wanted to make a change and do a bunch of testing in a testing environment, you don't have a CDN in place. Exactly. And so you get this sort of mismatch between what's in production and what people are doing in dev.
Which is always a risk.
Yeah.
And you guys are super agile, you're deploying all the time, you can't have that risk.
Yeah, we probably do 10 or 15 deploys a day with this.
So you came up with a cunning plan to overcome this. Show us what you did.
Yeah, so it's a really simple variation on what we had, but what we really did was to move the S3 bucket to the back, and we made a really small change to the application so that it would actually fall back and check into the bucket. And so we use the one bucket because this is only something that affects us while we're doing a deployment. But basically this one will call back to here as well. And so the idea is normal operation, consumer's request comes in, they get the main page, and then they pull back the static assets from the application and it's all fine. But where we have this mismatch happening, the application will then call through to the bucket and then pull the content through that way. And so we've got enough history here of the last 30 days worth of deploys that whenever we do the changeover, things keep working happily and we're all good.
So you've come up with a way that you can be serving billions of images and CSS and all sorts of content, but the developers can be updating confidently without breaking everything, and they can replicate these using CloudFormation, etc., and have a test environment as well.
That's right. One of the things we really wanted to avoid was a situation where a failure on this deployment here causes this thing to be mismatched. And the way we've built it now, we can be sitting like this for a day if we wanted to on different versions, and consumers one version would miss a feature, but it'd all be working.
It'd have the same experience. And this is a multi-region deployment, but with consistency.
That's right.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that with us today.
All right, thank you.
And thanks a lot for watching This Is My Architecture.